Hello, and welcome to Michell Consulting's webinar series for our Michell University. Today we're going to be working with Infor FACTS, and we're going to be talking about the financial reports setup in the FACTS software. For the purpose of the demo today, we're working with FACTS 7.7. So what we're going to discuss is how to set up the differences in the financial reports. So before we begin, let's actually take a look at when we run a financial report and see where the information is coming from. So here, from our FACTS main menu, we're going to go into General Ledger. We're going to go to End of Period, and we have Financial Reports. So here, we can see we're going to choose our current period. For the demo today, where our current period is June of 2010. So here we have report groups, and what these allow us to do is group different types of financials by branch or by department and so on. So let's take a look at what we've got set up, and we'll review these in detail when we get into the setup. So you can see we have a group for the Atlanta branch, we have a group for the Dallas branch, we have a company where all the accounts are consolidated, and then we have a company detail, which the branches and departments are broken down. So let's select the branch for Atlanta. And here's the reports to run. So again, we're going to search, and we have a profit and loss, and we have 3 balance sheet accounts, actually 4 balance sheet accounts that we created. So we're going to select this one here, which is the profit and loss statement, and our report format. So you can see here what we've got when we're determining to actually do our financials. We're doing a profit and loss. We can choose our group. The group allows us to segment these different reports by branch and by department and so on. Then we select our actual report, which here we have the profit and loss, and then we select the format. So here we're going to choose number 20, which is period and year to date with last year's comparison. So if we look here, we have all these different types. So again, this is going to be the columns that the report generates. So for example, we have here, for number 28, we have period actual and budget versus year-to-date actual and budget, and so on with a percentage. So we can choose these, and we'll see how these work in the setup. Let's just go ahead and choose that one. And we're going to click OK. And we're going to click OK. So we're going to run this report. And here, we're going to take a look at the report. And again, you can see what we're running. We're running a profit and loss. We can see here that we chose that profit and loss. You can see it's made up of sales or revenue accounts. We can see cost of sales, gross profit, and we'll talk about how this is set up and what accounts are appearing on this report. We have this. We have our group. So we're running this for the Atlanta branch because we have multiple branches set up for this demo. And then our columns. Remember, we asked for the year-to-date with the percentage. So we're looking here at the current period. So we're looking at June of 2010 with a percentage based on the revenue, and we're comparing that to June of 2009. Then we're looking at the year-to-date 2010 and comparing that to the year-to-date of 2009. And again, we have this report, which is a standard profit and loss account. So now let's see how that came about. So here what we're going to do is we're going to go into the financial reports and setup. And here's where we're going to determine the information. As you said, in this demo, we have 2 branches. We can see our setup in our general ledger. If we go to our infrequent file maintenance, we can see here that we have it set up here, the information, and you can see we have branches in the GL accounts, and we have a department set up. So we have our departments and branches set up in the system. Okay, so we can see that. So let's go here to the financial report setup. So the first thing we talk about is the group setup. This program allows the user to establish and maintain report groups that determine what GL accounts appears on the GL financial reports. So in this case, taking the example of we have the two branches, we created one for branch 1, which is the Atlanta branch, and one for branch 2, which is the Dallas branch. We're going to click here. And again, we can see we have the 4 we saw in the setup. We have the Atlanta branch, the Dallas, the company consolidated, and then the company each. So let's just select the first one. And you can see here that we have the consolidated. And we're seeing here our company 01. We can see our branch 01 and our department configuration. So what this does, it looks at the structure of the GL accounts to determine the setup of these two. If we went to the Dallas, we would see again it's still company 1, but we're looking at branch 02 and we're looking at department 02. And again, if we go to the next one, we can see that the company, because this is the consolidated, it's looking at company 1 and it's looking at from branch 1 to 2. So it's consolidating the two branches together. And if we go here to this one here, again, we don't have the consolidate turned on here. We can see here that we're consolidating here. Okay, we're also consolidating on these two, but we're just using the branches. So we can set this up. So here we can choose, again, our company, and we can choose our branch, and so on. So we can set this up for our reports. The next thing we saw is the report format. So let's go here, and let's actually look at a report format. So here we can see what we're looking at. Let's look at this first one here. We saw the period year. So again, what we're looking at is the descriptions. We're looking at the period and year to date with last year comparison with a percentage as a base. You can see that this is available for the profit and loss. So we can have reports that are for profit and loss or for balance sheets, or we can actually just create others. It tells me the period should be used, a maximum of 24 number of periods. We'll select as required. Use percent as base. We're turning that on. And we'll set that up later on in the actual detail. And then we have the report width and the mask. So again, very simple setup here that we can create. All the information is right here. So we see how we have the group, which determines what accounts we're going to use based on branch, and we have the control. The report format, which allows us to pick the columns. So let's now look at the financial report setup itself. Okay, so we're going to go in here, and again, we're going to look at one that we already have. So you saw that these were the ones we saw. We had the 4 balance sheets and the profit and loss. Let's take a look at the profit and loss. Let's see how this is built. So again, you can see the type. This is a profit and loss, and we're determining that. We have a description. We have lines to skip. What this allows us to do is to skip a line, okay, between each of the different captions or totals. Just make the report look nice. Negatives, how do I want to handle negatives? Do I want to use a parentheses? Do I want to use a minus sign before or a minus sign after? You can see here the default line for the number of days, and the default line is 30. Okay, this is the important part here when we actually set this up. When we saw that profit and loss, when we ran it, we saw that we had revenues, then we had cost of sales, then we had gross profit, and the other accounts. So here we can determine it based on this. Let's actually open that up again so we can look at it as we do it. Let's go here to our financial reports. And again, we're going to run it for our group. Take the Atlanta group. Let's look at our report. Let's run that. Let's put this off to the side here. Let's go back to the setup. Let's choose. So now let's take a look at this and see what's going on. So you can see here that we have revenues. And these revenues come from these accounts. So we have a sales account, a miscellaneous income, a consulting income, finance charges, and so on. Then I have, and if you see here, we have a caption. So we have the revenue caption here. We have here the accounts, and we're taking from account here 41000 to 410999. And because we're doing this, and we have our group set to branch, we're grabbing just that branch. Because remember, we had the second set of numbers in the GL account was the branch. So we would have a 410-01 for Atlanta and a 410-02 for Dallas. So here we're just selecting those right there. So we have that here, and then we have a total revenue. So we can see here total revenues. And then we have another caption, which is the cost of sales, which we have here. And then we have the accounts for that. We have two sets of accounts to get this information here. Then we have another total, cost of sales, gross profit, and so on. And if we look down the report, you can see we have the general admin expense, caption, and then here's how we're picking this, and so on. So let's take a look, and let's start from the beginning. You can see here, if we edit this line, we can see that this is a caption. Again, very simple. It's revenues. We only have one caption. Lines to skip one, so you see we have a blank line between revenues and the actual account sales and miscellaneous. And we have it centered, so we see it in the middle of the report. Here, the next line, line 20, if we edit this line, we can see that we're using a range, and these don't have to be actual GL accounts. They can be within the range. The purpose of this is that when you set it up, it makes it easier for when accounts are added. So what I'm saying is in my chart of accounts, all my accounts that begin with 4 are revenue accounts. So I have, say, from 410 to 490. Now, I don't have a branch 99 or department 9, but what I want to do is I want to put those in here just to make it easy. So I know that later on if I create a new sales account, so I know that if I create, say, a 430 account or a 445 account, since they fall within the range between 410 and 490, they're automatically going to get picked up on the financial report. So the good thing about FACTS is I don't have to go back like some systems. Every time I create a new sales general ledger account, I don't have to go add it to all the formats. If I select these ranges, I'm going to say whatever falls in that range, beginning with account 410. Again, I have 410-00-0, which is not really an account because I have those departments. But I just want to make sure I capture everything. Later on, I may create a department or branch 00, and it just gets picked up. You can see here lines to skip 0. So I'm not skipping any lines. That's why they're all right next to each other. All right. The percent of the baseline, okay, I'm using line 30. Line 30 just indicates that's going to be my percentage, which means that if you look here, I'm using line 30, which is my total revenues as the base. So I'm taking 100%, and everything's being compared to that. So when I look at my total cost, you can see it's 60% of the sales. So I have 990,000. And my cost of goods or cost of sales is 593,000, so it's about 60%, and so on. So I set that up because I'm basing everything, since it's a profit and loss, on revenue. So at the very end, I can see that I'm making a 10% profit on this. And that's going to be my base. Add to group total. So here I have, this is important when I actually do it. Here are the reversing of the signs. So what I'm doing is I'm reversing the signs. The reason why I'm doing that, because since revenues are credit accounts, and I don't want them to show up with the negative signs. I want everything to look the same. I would reverse my credit accounts so they're showing up as positive accounts. Again, it's just makes it a lot easier on the report to set it up that way. Here, add to total group. Here I have some predefined groups, so I'm going to add to these total groups. So what I'm doing is I'm using these groups to determine the information. So I'm going to take revenues minus cost of sales to get the gross profit, and then I'm going to take from the gross profit, I'm going to take away the general admin expenses and so on. So I'm using this to actually get my totals. Okay, and then the same thing, we can see cost of sales. Line 40 is a caption. And you can see here, again, cost of sales, we're skipping a line, and we're centering the caption. And here I'm using two sets of accounts for line 50 and 60. Again, the same principle. I know all my cost of sales start with the 530s, so I just want to grab the whole thing. Again, I'm not skipping any lines in between. And my base is always going to be line 30, which was the total revenues. And I'm printing that, and I'm also printing it on the report. So you can see that. And again, my total cost of sales. And you can see I'm rolling the total. Here I want to subtract it. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the total cost of sales, and I have this roll total. I'm going to subtract from, and then I'm going to clear out the totals to start another total. And I'm going to print on the report. What I'm doing that is basically I'm creating, as I go along, where my totals are going to come from. So I started with revenues, and you can see here that's total 1. So I'm adding it. So I'm taking sales, and I'm adding to the total group, and then I'm taking my cost of sales, which is part of group 1, and I'm subtracting. So I'm just taking revenue minus expenses, revenue minus cost of sales to get my gross profit. And again, that's also a group total. And you can see here, now I'm going into this one here, gross profit. I'm taking total 2. So I'm just going along as I work around. I'm using group 1 to take revenues minus costs, and I'm taking that total and I'm putting it into group 2. And then I will either add or subtract away from group 3. Wherever that total is, I'll put it into group 4, and so on and so on. I'll work my way down. So as I build this, there's no roll total, no. I don't want to roll it because I'm not adding and subtracting. I'm starting again. So now I have a gross profit and total group 2. And then here's, again, another caption, my general admin, as you can see here, which is I actually have 2 general admin expenses. And again, lines to skip, and I have it centered. And then here I have my accounts, and again, I have groups of accounts. So again, I'm going back to total 1 because since I didn't roll it, I'm going to go back to group total 1. And I have these. And again, same here. You can see I'm just doing my range. Again, the nice thing about this is because I'm going to be, as I create more expense accounts, as long as I create within that range, I don't have to re-add it to the profit and loss. And here's my total. So again, now I'm in that group 1 mode because I'm subtracting. Remember what I did is group 1 is consisted of revenues, and then group 1 was cost of sales, and group 1 is admin expense. So I'm starting off with revenues as group 1, then I'm subtracting cost, which is also group 1, okay, then I'm subtracting my expenses. So I'm working my way down, and again, I'm clearing my totals so I don't get duplications. And then here's my net profit and loss, and you can see the same thing. I just rolled for total revenues, which is group 2. So I'm rolling that into group 2. So total revenues was Net profit was group 2, and gross was also group 2. So I'm taking basically the gross profit, which is here, which is sales minus cost. And then from the gross profit, I'm taking my total admin expenses to get the information. So that's simply how it's set up. Again, it's not that complicated. It's just very difficult once you get going. Once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy. You just got to kind of make sure you know what you're doing before. So in this case, it's pretty self-explanatory because I know on a profit and loss, I'm taking revenues minus cost of sales to get a gross. But to get the bottom line, I'm taking really revenues minus cost minus expenses. Now, we could have down here some miscellaneous incomes and miscellaneous expense, so I would have to do the same thing. I have to take revenues minus cost minus expenses plus miscellaneous income, because it's a type of revenue, minus miscellaneous expense, and then get my total. And again, we can see this information here. It's because that's the columns we chose. And we can see that kind of holds true if we look at, again, a balance sheet account. Again, you see that we have assets as a caption, current assets as a caption, and then we have our current assets here. We have our total current assets, again, which we're using those groups and we're doing the adding and subtracting, and we're working our way down. The other way we have is the report setup layout. If we want to print these, we can actually go print them. I'm just going to run all of them. Because as we set these up, or as you set up one on your own, from time to time you may encounter something not adding up correctly. So what you want to do is you may want to print this. So again, it tells you the information. The T is the line type. We have A for add and subtract, the sign reversal, the groups. Same thing here, the P, total group to print, the roll, and everything. So again, you can see here, this was the, let's find our P&L one. These are all our balance sheets. And we can see here, again, the capture account and the information. Here's our lines 10, 20, 30. And again, we can look really simply what we're doing. Again, this information that you see along here relates to the top of the report. If we're adding or subtracting and so on. So if we go down here, you can see again what we're doing along the report. So again, just nice to look at it if you want to check our report. Sometimes these can be very complicated. We have a lot of GL accounts, and we just may have a problem. We want to do it and take a look at it. We can also do a duplicate report setup, and this is nice because a lot of clients will do this once we create one. Like typically what I would do is, let's say I have 2 branches, and I want to create a detailed one with both branches, then I want one profit and loss for branch 1 and one for branch 2. Well, the easiest thing to do is do the consolidated one first. So what I would do is I would create a format, and I would use that same principle. I would say, give me from, GL accounts 400 to 499, which is I know all my revenue. But again, I'm not using any branches. I'm just picking everything. Then once I create the total, I can then copy that or duplicate it, and I can copy it onto another name and then remove the accounts I want. So if I'm doing it with all the accounts, then I would go back in and say just copy it to a new one and call it my new one and then delete what I wanted to do. And that's in the duplicate setup report, which is a copy from, copy to. So what you would do is you would pick the profit and loss. We give it a new name, say P&L2. And we put a description, and what it'll do is it'll just copy it. Then once I copy it, I can call up P&L2 and make any changes I want. So if you have a lot of these to do, maybe you have 2 companies that are very similar, 2 different databases, you can just move them from company to company. So it makes it a lot easier. The report figures file maintenance. This just lets me make some changes. Again, here you're looking at the reports here, and these reports are coming from the year-to-date information. Again, this is from the buckets, so if there was any problems, you can actually make a change to the report figures. So you can see here we have the Atlanta branch and all the information. And we don't recommend doing that unless there really is a problem. We should rely on the actual information from the general ledger. It should be accurate. But sometimes there could be issues with a month-end close or something went wrong. Or what happens is maybe we're starting on facts in the middle of the year. So we were starting, let's say, on June. So what we want to do is to get our year-to-date, we want to go into here and we want to add the information. Edit this. We want to add the information for all the different columns and all the different months. So when we run this, we can get our year-to-date. We don't have to wait till next year to the information built. That's when this is used. Okay, so let's recap what we've done today. We can see that when we run financials, when we're in general ledger and we go to end of period, we have our financial reports. When we run our financial reports, obviously we can choose our period. In this case, we're doing the current period, which is June of 2010. There's our groups. Again, we can select our groups. And we can actually run multiple. So let's just select all of them. So we can say all groups. Here we can say, actually let's do two so we can see it on the screen. Let's do this branch. Let's do the two branches. And again, the same with the reports. You can actually go here. Let's add. And let's do the profit and loss with that. And let's also add, again, if we want to do the balance sheet. And again, we have our different periods here, and these were linked to the type of financial, either profit and loss or balance sheet. Let's click OK. And what we're doing is we're going to see here as we're getting all three of them. So let's take a look. We have here the profit and loss for the Dallas branch, because we asked for that one. We have the profit and loss, we have the balance sheet here. Let's close that, I have too many open. We have the balance sheet here, for the balance sheet for Atlanta. And then we have our profit and loss for Atlanta. So again, we can run all those reports. And when we do run these reports, the information we're getting is in the setup. So we have our groups and our reports. And how that comes about is in the setup. So if we go to financial reports setup, we can control our groups. You can see here we have the Atlanta branch, and we're using a consolidated, and we're choosing our company and our branch. So Atlanta is always going to be branch 1. We can see Dallas is just branch 2. We have a consolidated, which is branch 1 and 2, because we have 2 branches for this company, and that's consolidated here. And then we have a detail, which is the same thing but not consolidated. So again, we can set that up so we can make it very easy to run reports. Our report format file maintenance, this determines our columns, and you can see here that we have all these different types, and you can see here the different types. We have another one here, but we can see these are balance sheets, so we saw that number 50. This is only used for the balance sheet, that's why it came up. And again, we can see the different ones here. This is the profit and loss, this is number 20. We can set this information up. Again, however we want to set it up. It's easy for us to work with. And then we have the actual setup of the report. You'll see here that we had this profit and loss. And again, what we're doing is we're just building based on lines. We have different types. We have caption accounts, which are headers. We have the actual account, which is looking at general ledger information. And then we have totals. So in this case, a very simple P&L. We're looking at revenues. So we have a caption for revenue. We have all the revenue accounts. And again, the nice thing about this is the account doesn't necessarily have to be on file. It has to be an actual account, but we can put a range. The good thing about that is since all my revenue accounts start from 410 and go to 490, I just put the whole range. I may not be using all those accounts. I only may have accounts that start with, say, 410, 415, and 420. But as I grow and I want to create other divisions, I may want to have revenue accounts that start with a 430 or a 440. Again, they're in that range. Typically, revenue accounts start with a 4, costs start with a 5, and so on. Expenses are 6 and 7s and that kind of stuff. That's kind of a standard way accounting is done. So it just makes it easier that way. Again, I can base my percentages. You can see it's all based on that line 30, which is the revenue. And the same thing here. Again, I have totals. What total accounts allow me to do is add, again, the totals. I have up to 8 totals here. Okay, and I would group, and I would either add, subtract, depending on what I do. I would just follow the general flow of the report. So in this case, I'm taking revenues minus costs minus expenses to get my net profit. And you can see as we go along, you can see that subtraction. I'm subtracting total costs from the revenues and so on. Okay. I can print them if I want, so I can print all of them, or I can just do the one I want. So let's just do the profit and loss. This is helpful when you're building these. Sometimes when you print them, they're just out of balance. Something's not right. You want to see what's missing. And again, you can do all. I'm just going to select that one. And again, it tells you what all the lines mean. T is for line type. So you can see here in the information, caption, you can see account total. You can see the A is for the add or subtract. We have the S for the signs, and so on and so on. So we can look at this information. Again, we can see if we have any problems with it. If we want to create another one, so we can do duplicate. We can say copy from this one here. And we can call this, let's call this P and L2, and we're going to call it and we click OK. Copy's complete. So now if we go back here and look, we go to financial report setup and look, you can see it's here. And we have it here. And again, I can delete the lines, or I can just delete this whole one if I want. I want to delete number 2. It's out of the system. The report figures allow us to go in, and here we can add or make changes to the types of report. Remember the different columns we're using. So we're going to select that group code, which we have here, group 1, and we can see our format that we're using. And again, these are the columns, so we have the different amounts. So again, we may want to change these, or we actually started in the middle of something. We want to be able to update and add figures so we can run year-to-date. So that concludes our webinar today using Infor FACTS is financial report setup. This webinar is being recorded. It will be available on our website. You can visit us at www.michellgroup.com to view this, plus our other webinars. And once again, we thank you for your time.